Hello and welcome back to the TVBinges.com Pilot Roundtable, a Southgate Media Group podcast. I'm Kyle Tremblay, the editor of TVBinges.com, and I am joined as always by a fellow TV Binges writer. She's leaving s'mores on the doorsteps of all of her patients. It's Olivia Richards. Hello.
Hey, how's it going? I'm currently drunk on creme de menthe.
Yes, absolutely. We both are in honor of this pilot. Creme de menthe and s'mores.
Yes.
And taquitos. So, if you haven't guessed what we're talking about already by that conversation or by the title of this podcast, we are discussing the first CBS show to premiere in 2016. It's the single-cam sitcom Angel from Hell. Olivia, what did you think of this pilot?
Okay, I know it's not objectively the best pilot, the best show I've ever watched or that we've ever previewed, but I loved it, and I don't have the same reaction that I had to Selfie, where objectively I knew it wasn't the best, but I can't stop myself from watching it.
Now, how much of this is just Jane Lynch love?
About 98%.
Okay, I see what's going on here.
Just get that out in the open.
Yeah. So what did you like about it? What nail down what made you like this pilot?
I very much liked the chemistry between the two actresses, and I felt like this show had very much, to me, the kind of vibe that I got from, like, Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23. Another show that objectively, if you took a step back and looked at it, it wasn't the best show. But you have this really awesome chemistry between the two lead actresses that, despite the writing, not always being, top-notch, you just kind of wanted to keep watching.
Yeah, and actually, first of all, the premise of this show is that Jane Lynch is introduced as a street magician, but she is actually, apparently, the guardian angel of a sort of hard-charging, work-oriented dermatologist named Allison, who is played by Maggie Lawson. And Amy, the Jane Lynch character, intervenes because Allison is about to marry David Denman, a.k.a. Roy from The Office. And apparently she didn't watch The Office because otherwise she would know he's a scumbag, as she finds out in this episode when he is cheating on her with her best friend. And so Amy warns Allison of this, and then Allison sort of stops thinking of her as a crazy person and starts thinking of her as some kind of odd friend. So two stumbling blocks right up front with this one, for me. Apparently not for you. This is a terrible premise. This is a really, really bad premise for a show. And honestly, the kind of premise that really isn't that needed. Like, I don't know if we need to get into Guardian Angels for this. The other premise is that it's really not funny. In the sense that it's not even really, like, going for jokes. And I can appreciate that. Like, I don't need it to be going for jokes. It's a single cam, and I'm glad CBS is sort of continuing to take shots at single cams. But it really only has one comedic well that it can go to, and that's Jane Lynch saying outrageous things. Which, granted, is not a bad well. It is a fairly deep well, as far as comedy goes. But I don't know if you could sustain a sitcom where like the only trick up your sleeve is Jane Lynch says something outrageous. Like that is, I think they're going to have to figure something out with regards to making this show funny at all. But having said that, there is a very pleasant tone to the show. And I think Maggie Lawson does a sort of quietly good job here at making her character not especially manic, and she's not dislikable at all. She's very likable. And the tone, like I said, the tone of the show, the feel of the show is very welcoming in a way that I wasn't expecting. And the only part of it that isn't that is Jane Lynch, and which actually works because her comedy like cuts against everything else in the show, and that makes it sort of more, it lands a little better. Like, it's sort of this pleasant, nice, charming show, and then Jane Lynch comes in and says something ridiculous. And that's a decent formula for comedy. And so I think I didn't hate it, I'll say. And honestly, you might convince me to give this one a very tepid thumbs up by the end of this conversation. I'm kind of on the fence. But...
I was going to say, let's see how this goes. Honestly, what really did it for me is I liked, despite the fact that Jane Lynch was saying, all these bizarre things throughout the entire thing, you can tell that she brought a lot of sincerity to the role, which I really appreciated. And they didn't do the thing that we were both talking about that we both hate, where they just toss in 45 seconds of okay, this person is decent, so that, it kind of sells you, quote unquote, on a show that's really kind of not great and doesn't have any kind of character development or growth or anything. I like how when they actually led up to the moment that she really explains why she's doing this, it didn't come completely out of left field, and it didn't feel like there was, insincerity. The whole thing, despite, Jane Lynch just going off and doing her thing, always had a kind of a warmth and a heart to it.
I agree with that. I think that's a really good point, that she wasn't... Jane Lynch's character, and what I think the key decision the show made is that Jane Lynch's character is not awful, she's just wacky. She's not an aggressively bad person who is making Allison's life worse. She's someone who is certainly off kilter and is certainly taking Allison out of her comfort zone, but never in this pilot is she really doing something that is aggressively mean or bad or compromises her in any way. And I think that that's a real important thing, and a lot of times on these comedies we see it where they really want to push the envelope and make ill-advised attempts at being memorable, and they make all the characters do really terrible things. And so I definitely appreciated the restraint that much of what the ridiculous of Jane Lynch's character is what she's saying, as opposed to her messing up Allison's life. And so I do think that the show is kind of low-key smart in that regard, in that it does seem to have a sense of how to calibrate this Jane Lynch character so that she can do all the Jane Lynch things, but isn't actually someone you root against and you're not horrified by what she's doing. I definitely appreciated that about this pilot.
Oh, exactly. I think one of the other things that kind of go into a little bit of the con column, and I have seen this pointed out, is that Allison, really the first episode, the only thing that was really not great in her life was her kind of crappy boyfriend,
yes.
And her, kind of cheating best friend. But that was really it. It kind of seems like Allison really has her life together, so there kind of was no reason for her to, need this big guardian angel intervention. And I'm kind of interested to see where they're going to take this, because as it stands, it's there's really no reason
yes.
to be a plot at the moment.
And that is exactly right. That's my big thing about the premise. That's why I say this is a terrible premise for a show. Because there is a kind of CBS-y idea here that is sort of uncomfortable. CBS being the sort of network for old people, and I would say a little bit more conservative than the rest of the networks, appealing to sort of a middle-of-the-country audience. There is an idea that because Allison is a hard worker, something is wrong with her life. And if you made the lead of this show a man, and there's no reason you couldn't, there's nothing about this premise that makes it specific to be a woman, but you can't, if it was just a guy who worked at an advertising agency 60 hours a week or something, it would be perplexing why his guardian angel would feel the need to intervene because he's about to marry a woman who's cheating on him and works kind of hard. Right. There is something about her being a woman that I think goes unspoken in this. That you need an intervention because you're not partying. You're not having any fun in your life. That's something you would never say to a man in his late 20s. Yeah, bro, or early 30s, whatever. You're in a career. You're working hard. You're making a good living for yourself. You're dating. This isn't guardian angel territory. The mistake she was about to make. Listen, if guardian angels in this world intervene every time someone is going to marry the wrong person, then there should be a lot more guardian angels around.
Right?
And so that was my biggest question. It's why... I don't think this pilot does a good job establishing the necessity of its premise. And they could have really made her more of a workaholic. Like they could have really went. That's the one place I think they could have went overboard in like showing that her life was kind of a mess. Like maybe if she was like a hoarder or something, like some kind of thing that makes you feel like a guardian angel intervention is necessary. Which brings me to my idea for this show and the way that I hope this show goes. And Olivia, you tell me if you like this or not.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Throw it out there.
What if Jane Lynch isn't her guardian angel? What if she actually is just a woman who did like Google research on her and talked to some of her friends maybe and knows all this stuff about her by basically stalking her? And what if she is a little bit crazy and is pretending to be her guardian angel and over time this series reveals that?
I would be so in for watching that because it would make so much more sense than this being like, or like, I don't know, just the way this entire thing was set up.
Well, because this premise, even if you like accept it, which I'm not super willing to do, but if you do, then it's gonna get old after a while. Like how many, like is every episode's going to be like Jane Lynch teaching Maggie Lawson a lesson about life? Like, is that where we're going here? Is this a Cooper Barrett's Guide to Surviving Life situation?
No.
Like, what are you gonna get out of that? It's just this one woman's trip through life as her guardian angel teaches her how to live like a normal person, which she was already doing.
No, exactly. Yeah. Or like, at least I thought, like maybe they could have put her in a job she really didn't want to be in, like something that like we had talked about before, like would have constituted like a heavenly intervention, but. Just short of that, there's no reason for there to be that other plot. Like we were going with, if she had just been kind of this crazy woman who was basically cyber stalking her and just put herself, in Allison's life. That's a show.
It's a show, and also you brought up Selfie, which I think is a decent comparison, but the difference is, and Selfie I think became an actually good show by the time it was canceled, which thanks ABC.
It hurt.
But the thing with Selfie is that had a sort of similar relationship, I don't know what the gender roles were, but between a very hard-charging professional man, and a sort of flighty woman. So it's reversed, I guess, but tenuous. We'll press forward. But the point is, that was a two-sided relationship. That he was teaching her things and she was teaching him things. And that was the sort of idea of the show, is this relationship that's a give and take. When the second person in the relationship is a literal angel, I don't know what you can teach the angel. And that's my worry about the sustainability of this, is that if Jane Lynch really is an angel who lives in heaven and has chosen to reveal herself to Maggie Lawson at this moment in her life, well, how is that going to be a two-sided relationship? I don't know how you're going to have there be any kind of give and take. And in this pilot, you see like all that happens is Amy telling her what she should do and Allison fighting against it and then realizing that Amy's right. And is that going to be every episode? Because if Amy's if Amy is an angel, I don't like that they both start with A and Angel starts with A also, by the way. But
I know.
If Amy's an angel, then how are you going to do anything different than that? And so I really think this show would be fascinating if in this first season it's gradually revealed that she's not an angel and that she actually has real problems in her own life and is compensating for her own loneliness by posing as a guardian angel to try to help Alice, to try to help someone younger than her who maybe could use a little bit of help and bring some joy into both their lives. And if that's like a gradual reveal and it sort of becomes this friends dynamic as opposed to angel and the person she's helping dynamic.
Fingers crossed, because I'm like, if that turns out to be the case, this show is going to be really, really, really interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think that's a much more like ambitious and interesting way for this show to go. I think there's a 90% chance that is not what this show is going for. So So it does seem to me like she is a literal angel, but I think they left enough room in this pilot. Like she didn't like ascend to heaven or anything, right? Like she was doing.
She didn't like sprout wings or anything.
Yeah, she like made a taquito appear and was doing magic tricks. Like we can work with this. So
right.
So okay. Well, anyway, that's my hope for the show. This premiere did a 1.6 rating in the demo with about 8 million viewers, which is fine. It's just slightly lower than Mom, which premiered its season on the same night, and is also, by the way, Mom is a kind of slightly more ambitious than you would think multicam on CBS, so that gives me just a little bit of hope that this show might be a little bit more than meets the eye, but we'll see. Anyway, so decent debut, not a hit or anything, but what is your thought on canceled quickly, makes it through the season, or renewed for next season?
I think it's at least going to make it through the season. I think they have a really good kind of vehicle going with Jane Lynch as the lead, and it seems like enough people were watching that I think it has a really good shot to at least make it through its first season.
I do too. I think this kind of has a feel like About a Boy did on NBC a few seasons back, which is it does okay ratings its first season, it gets renewed, and then it slowly dies out. That's my sense of this, unless they do something interesting with the premise. The premise of this show is such that it's not going to survive more than a season and a half or whatever, unless they have something up their sleeves to change it or to do something about it. So we'll see going forward. So Olivia, final verdict, thumbs up or thumbs down on Angel from Hell?
Despite some of its problem areas, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I like it.
Yeah. I'm still on the fence, but as is my tradition as a cynical person, on the fence means a thumbs down from me. I think that there is a lot to like here tonally. I think Jane Lynch's performance is just saving this show. If that was a different actor, if that was a different part, the show would be an absolute mess. Because again, the premise is really bad. Like honestly, this show is laid out like our solar system, and Jane Lynch is the sun. Like this is a show about Jane Lynch. It revolves around her. Literally all the comedy comes from her. and I mean, if you took her away, the show just there's nothing there. So, and she does a very admirable job in this pilot of keeping it afloat, and she's the only reason I would consider giving this a tepid thumbs up. But ultimately, I'm going to give it an unenthusiastic thumbs down. And again, if they do something interesting with the premise, I will be happily wrong about this one. So we'll see that going forward.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Pilot Roundtable, a TVBinges.com and Southgate Media Group production. You can listen to all of our episodes on iTunes, where you can rate and review us. We'd appreciate that. Or find us at SouthgateMediaGroup.com. Follow Olivia on Twitter at RichardsOlivia, and me on Twitter at KyleLovesTV. Until next time.